Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Dr. Joey interviews Christian business professionals just like you to discover their secrets for working faith positive in a negative world. Welcome to Faith Positive Radio with Dr. Joey Fawcett.
Faith Positive Nation, hi, Dr. Joey Fawcett here with you for another amazing and really exciting episode of Faith Positive Radio. I am so humbled that you choose to listen to this podcast about faith and work, about how you can increase your faith with greater joy at work so that you love God and others more. One of the great joys of my work is I get to talk to people from all different kinds of work out there and how God is working through them to make a positive difference in other people's lives and to be Christ in the workplace. So today I'm especially excited because, I need a drum roll or something. Chuck, can you insert a drum roll here for me? Today we're interviewing, I'm talking with the guy who was voted in his Baylor School of Medicine class, who was voted most likely to marry a Denny's waitress. Now, when was the last time we interviewed somebody who in his med school class was voted most likely to marry a Denny's waitress? The only possible way I think we could improve on that would have been if it was to marry a Waffle House waitress from the West Coast, the East Coast like I am. So, and West Coast be IHOP, right? That's absolutely amazing. So a doctor with a sense of humor, but moreover, a medical doctor with a heart literally the size of Texas, because he's from Texas. A doctor with a heart the size of Texas for people that are sent to him by God for healing. And so he's written a book called A Spoonful of Courage for the Sick and Suffering. So today, Faith Positive Nation, you want to make sure that anybody in your world who's struggling with some sort of illness or suffering, or has had a loved one to pass away recently from some sort of illness, and just trying to make sense of what it means when our physical bodies are not working the way that we want them to, make sure they listen to this podcast. I want to introduce you to my new best friend from the great Republic of Texas. Dr. Chuck Page is here with us today. Dr. Chuck, welcome to Faith Positive Radio.
Man, it's great to be here. You know, I couldn't afford to go to Waffle House, so I had to go to Denny's.
Come on, man. Denny's is more expensive than Waffle House. I've been in Waffle Houses all over.
So anyway, so my med school class at the end of basic sciences, since I stopped going to class so I could be more efficient with my studying. So I'd go to Denny's at like 7 o'clock in the morning, study all day, just, pile up on the coffee and a grand slam and just study till the sun went down. And so that's how I did it. And so that's why they gave me the award, because I hung out at Denny's. So
wait a minute, now let me get this straight. You didn't go to class. Instead, you studied the books and materials at Denny's.
Yeah, I was a weird guy. In fact, in college, I studied in a broom closet. So, but that's another story for another day. I've got
Most likely to marry a janitor.
Yeah. So anyway.
Oh man, I am absolutely loving it. So what type of doctor are you? Medical doctor are you?
So I'm a general surgeon in small town America, in Texas. And so I do everything. There's really not anything that I don't do. I tell people I'm the best guy to see on the worst day of your life. So the
best guy to see on the worst day of your life. Man,
it's kind of like I'm a person that nobody really knows exists until something really bad happens. So, a lot of people are like, well, Dr. Page, who is he? And that's kind of a good thing. So Funny story. So before, probably about 3 months ago, I went in to see a patient, and it was right before Christmas. And when I entered the room, he just lit up. He just looked so happy. And he said, "Hey, Doc, I hadn't seen you in 7 years." I'm like, what? And it kind of hurt my feelings, 7 years.
And he was happy about not seeing me.
He was happy about not seeing me. And I said, well, wait a minute. So tell me, why are you not happy? And he said, well, the last time you saw me, you chopped my leg off, I guess that kind of explains it, doesn't it?
I guess it does. Yeah, well, and that makes sense, because if you're a general surgeon, somebody's coming to you because they've got a hernia, or the gallbladder needs removing, or it's the worst day of their life. So you're the best guy for them to see on the worst day of their lives.
But otherwise, you don't want to see me. My wife's happy to see me. So That's
Yeah.
what matters.
That at the end of the day, that's what really matters. So why are you the best guy for me to see on the worst day of my life, Dr. Chuck?
Well, because I fix problems, and
Mm,
and I see people in their worst. It's kind of interesting. I've kind of had a ringside seat to see people suffer, and
mm,
talking about faith and how that kind of incorporates into our work and all.
mhm,
I've kind of been able to see people that have really responded in amazing ways, in their health crisis.
mm,
And so that's kind of what kind of inspired me to start writing and, telling these stories, because there's so many ordinary people that just inspire me every day,
mm,
and it just, one of the great things about my job, uh, and there's a lot of bad things about my job right now, but one of the
sure.
great things about my job is that, I'm able to, uh, I'm able to see people at their worst, and really, I realize just how bad things can really get, so,
Mm,
so
mhm,
whenever I come to work, I realize just what a blessing it is just to be able to get up and go to work and be able to, to make a difference in people's lives. I had a lady, Joey, come in the emergency room probably, 3 or 4 months ago, and it just broke my heart. She had had metastatic ovarian cancer for 16 years.
16 years she lived
Yeah,
with it?
and she had raised her
Wow.
kids. I mean, this had happened in her 30s. So here she is,
Mm,
and she's at the end of life. She's been to the big cancer center, and they tell her, there's nothing else we can do. Well,
mm,
this lady, her name is, we'll call her Maggie just to protect her name, but
okay.
Maggie was not ready to go.
Mm,
And here it is. I mean, she had been developing this left lower quadrant abdominal pain, and then her intestines just spilled out over her abdominal wall.
mm,
Here it is. I'm looking at her going, oh my goodness, what am I going to
yeah.
do with this lady? And
Mm,
she told me, she said, Doc, um, I've learned to play the cards that God deals me.
mm,
And I was like, oh my goodness,
mm,
I don't have that kind of faith.
mm,
And she also said, doctor, um, I've also realized that if one person is encouraged or inspired or maybe drawn closer to Christ through my health crisis and my health problems, it's been worth it. And I was like, wow,
wow.
what a perspective. And you run across these people all the time. And you see these people's stories. These are everyday people that, they're never going to be on a radio show. They're never going to be
Mhm,
writing a book or whatever, but it's just inspiring stories. And it makes you realize just how much we have to be thankful for.
mm,
And so that's
mm,
kind of one of the things that inspired me to write this book in particular. And kind of dealing with how do I process these things in my own
mhm,
life.
mm. So, wow, your patients teach you, Dr. Chuck.
I've learned to listen, Joey.
Mm,
Yes, I've learned to listen over the years, and there's a lot of things that we can learn from people.
man, I'm trying to get my head wrapped around a doctor who listens because so so often the journey is the opposite. You know what I'm saying with the almost commoditization of medicine today. What?
Yes, sir.
Well, let's talk about listening for a moment. How did you learn to listen?
Well, I think it's a process where you see things and you learn things, and sometimes you miss things. I mean,
Yeah.
even in medicine, we got to realize we live in this technological age where we get the CAT scan first, and then we try to find the diagnosis. Really in medical school, they taught us 85, 90% of our diagnoses are based upon what the patients tell us. And if you ask the right questions, and if you listen long enough, your patients are going to tell you what's wrong with them. And
Mm,
it's funny how now in medicine we are doing the reverse. I can't tell you how much of my job is now spent trying to explain, well, the CAT scan shows this, but that has nothing to do with why you're here. And so, yeah, so
mm,
learning to listen to people is really the art and the craft that really the last generation of doctors, they got it, you
uh,
know? And then,
right.
so 85% are based upon what people tell us. And then that other 5 to 10% based on physical exam and then tests. And we just kind of got it completely wrong. And so,
Wow.
and that's one of the challenges that we face today in our new technological age, is that we're losing that human touch, that connection between patients and doctors. And I've learned that just listening often is one of the simplest ways to come to a diagnosis.
So listening is a great tool, the best
Absolutely.
diagnostic tool available. What is there about listening that really feeds your soul as a physician?
Well, I also learn from my patients, like I said, and
Mm,
I'm also learning to listen to God,
there's a
He
novel
usually got an
idea.
answer, He doesn't want to keep us in the dark about his will and what his plans are for our lives. And
Right,
I've
right.
learned that when I listen, it saves me a lot of pain,
Yeah.
a lot of, things that, that perhaps would, maybe, a lot of shortcuts I often like to take that God's not ready for me to do. So
Mm,
anyway, but listening is huge.
listening is huge. I mean, Psalm 46:10, be still, right? And
Yep.
know that I'm God. And then I think about Elijah trying to listen through firestorms and tornadoes and things like that. But where
Yep.
does that voice of God come? It's in the stillness, and there's that still small voice. How do you, because being a general surgeon, man, you're chasing it from the time you get up till the time you collapse into your
Yes,
home in
sir.
the evenings. And then sometimes you get interrupted at home, I'm sure. How do you find that time to listen to God for your own sanity and soul growth?
I have to get up early in the morning.
Oh, really? That's your
Yeah,
special
five
time with
o'clock.
God?
Yeah, it's my special time with God. And sometimes I'll sit there. It's funny now. My family's beginning to get up early in the morning. My girls are getting up early, and
Really?
so it's kind of cool. It's great to have them around, but then sometimes that takes away. But but just
I'm
yeah, I
glad
know.
you're
Just
up, but go in the other room.
so Joey, I want to sit in my blue chair and just have nobody bother me. And for me, that's like
That's heaven.
maybe that's a guy thing, but just 5 minutes apiece. And so,
Yeah.
but sitting, getting up in the morning, getting my coffee,
Mm,
opening my Bible,
mhm.
and starting my day that way. And it's really amazing what a difference that makes.
Oh, yeah. So what time do you get up, Dr. Chuck?
Usually between 4:30 and 5.
Okay.
And so I'll
4:30.
spend an hour and a half. I try to write as well. So it's been
Okay.
difficult to write recently, but and so journaling has also became a big thing. And I didn't
Mm,
really realize what I was doing initially. Matter of fact, my first book was on sleep, and I was having a lot of sleep problems. As you can imagine, I mean, I faced insomnia and stuff from a lot of different directions, but I began to search the scriptures for answers.
mm,
And that's when I began to realize how much the scriptures said about sleep and rest, and how far I was kind of messing up in those areas. So
mhm,
um, that started that, and then it kind of rolled over into processing the things that are happening in my life
mm,
with patients. How do we see these things that are like, how do you how do you wrap your mind around what's happening with this patient?
mm, because
So
you see them as people instead of an illness, and
yeah, I
that
tried to,
that
and so
Texas-sized heart of yours becomes concerned about them. So how do you get that picture out of your head?
right, and so that's where journaling came in, and actually I've
Okay.
realized that that's kind of how I do. I just write it and write stories about patients and try to find a spiritual connection with whatever's going on with me and my patients, and just life in general.
Okay. Is that how you came about to write this book, Spoonful?
Yeah, Spoonful of Courage for the Sick and Suffering. I'm hoping
Mhm.
this will be a series. We'll see how this one goes, but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like to write. I'm right now working on a Spoonful of Courage for a caretaker. As we were talking
Mm,
even before the show about my wife who just had a hysterectomy. I had to take off my surgeon's hat, take care of her, and be a husband.
mm,
I believe the caretakers are often the biggest kind of the forgotten sufferers when there's a family illness, because they have to suffer in a kind of a unique way as opposed to the person who's sick, who has all the attention and the focus. The
mm.
caregiver often is the one that has to, their whole life has to change, and the roles have to change, and they
Yeah.
often have to do things that they never really signed up for when they,
Mm-mm.
like for example, if your husband, and things you didn't really sign up for,
Mm-hmm.
when you got married. I mean, we all say that vow for sickness and in sickness and health, but
Yeah.
we don't really realize what that commitment means sometimes.
Yeah. For better or for worse, you don't exactly read the fine print and
Yep.
go, oh, you meant this. But it's a volunteer mission, right? You raised your hand, you went into it voluntarily. That's amazing about the caregivers, because that's a personal part of my wife and my journey. When we have a
Really?
friend who, let's say, well, active live case right now as we're recording this in February. I mean, we've got a dear, dear friend who's in the hospital, really sick, and fell off a ladder, and I won't go into all the details, but my wife and I drove out of town, and we decided my wife would take his wife out to dinner just to get her out of the room, get her out of the hospital for a little while to where she could talk, right? And then I would sit with the patient. So it worked out marvelously well, and we just make that a habit. Let's go and if the caregiver's a male, I'll take them out. And if it's female, my wife will take them out. They just go off and give them some fresh air, some good food, and just a place to unwind and care for. Because as you said, the doctors, the nurses, everybody's focused on the patient. But what about that caregiver whose life is on hold equally?
Then that is an awesome ministry. I mean, you just never know what kind of difference that makes in somebody's life. It's just giving them a break. They say you're supposed to show up, shut up, and serve, and that's a great way to serve people. It's just
Beautiful.
It's just giving them a break. I mean, because so often a caretaker, all their friendships and everything. I mean, they can't have any relationships like they had before.
Mm-hmm.
In the hobbies and stuff that they had, the things that kind of help them, kind of make sense of it. It's just tough.
Yeah, you lose all your coping skills for life in general, which is stressful enough. And now you set all that aside to focus on that patient. You mentioned sleep. Medical school probably taught you not to sleep.
Yes, sir.
So, and there's so many people today that we hear from in our coaching practice about, having trouble sleeping and unpacking what happened during the day and just processing everything, or they go to sleep right away because they're exhausted and they wake up at 3 o'clock with what I call the financial terrors if they're a business owner,
Yes,
something
sir.
like that. So what are some of the things the Bible said, and I don't want you to give them all away because we want to buy your book on sleep, but what are some of the things that you discovered in the Bible about sleep and rest?
Well, first of all, there's no magical self-help formula that's going to help you get a good night's sleep. There are some principles that we can adopt in the scriptures that really help us. And really, it kind of talks more about our attitudes. One of the interesting things about human beings as opposed to other animals in creation is that, we sleep about a third of our life. If you look at giraffes and elephants, and they only sleep 2-3 hours for a 24-hour period.
Wow.
Kind of interesting. So they're always on the alert, and sleep doesn't really fit in the scientific evolutionary box. I mean, they can't explain why we sleep. Now, we Christians understand why, because I believe God just created us to turn off.
Yeah.
And someone said that sleep is God's contrivance to give to man what he cannot do for himself while he's asleep. And so realizing that, that God is just as active when we're asleep as when we're awake. We think, we turn off the light, good night, God, I'm going to sleep, and that God somehow just turns off. But the scriptures are just the opposite. In fact, you go back to Genesis.
Yes.
It says, in the evening and the morning were the first day. In the creation story, I mean, it's interesting that Adam started his day with rest, and we just get it just the reverse. We think our day starts when we get up in the morning. So sleep in a sense is an extension of God's, or an expression of God's grace.
Oh, definitely. And he put Adam into a deep sleep in order to create Eve.
And he gave him Eve. And so just thinking about that, and then like in the Psalms, it says, that he gives to his beloved as he sleeps in Psalm 127. Just that point of, and it talks about that, you're, lest the Lord builds the house, you labor in vain. And so often, all those things that challenge us as we go to sleep, because I have a lot of things that rob me in my sleep. It's the things that race through my mind like most people do. I mean, I'm a small business owner too, and I have 6 employees, and I have, and I have to think about, oh my goodness, did I do the right thing on that patient today? You know,
Mm.
and all those things begin to race through my mind. And so, in realizing that we have to turn off all those things and just give it to God, you know?
Yeah. And I love what you said about God's active while we're sleeping, because the
Yep.
Bible is full of stories about God appearing to people in dreams.
Mm-hmm.
Jacob's dream being a huge one. Joseph had a dream, get up and take Mary and Jesus. Well, first
Yep.
of all, Mary, and then get up and take Mary and Jesus and go to Egypt for a while. There's just God's activity in the dream world there's just so many stories about that. So if somebody is beating themselves up because they say, man, I'm a Christian, I should be able to sleep all night long. I shouldn't be worrying about all this stuff. What one piece of advice, Doc, would you give them?
Well, first of all, do as I say, not as I do.
In other words, you're still
I'm a good doctor. I disconnect. So
yeah.
One of the interesting things that I found in my sleep, and one of the things I didn't realize is that I actually had a sleep disorder. I have sleep apnea and didn't even know it.
Wow.
And so, maybe being the surgeon, sometimes wrong, never in doubt. I'm always fixing everybody else's problems and didn't realize that I had my own sleep issues. So you need to go get evaluated. You need to have someone take an objective look at your life. There's over 1,000 sleep disorders, and just to have it checked out is one of the first things that you can do. And that's one of the things we bring up in A Wise Heart. Because everything affects sleep, our health, our relationships, our daily decisions. So get that checked out. It's interesting, since I've now been treated for my sleep apnea, it's hard to articulate exactly how much better I feel and how much better I deal with problems and people during the day. But I'm so much more patient. I'm so much more, just so less edgy and irritable with people. And I didn't realize the effect that was making, and so getting that checked out can really make a difference. But I still face sleep issues. They still call me at 2:00 in the morning to see what I'm doing. Hey doc, it's 3:00 in the morning. What you doing? Yeah, I'm sleeping.
Well, at least I was.
Yeah.
Till you called. What's wrong?
But I think that's huge. I think understanding that we talk about a calm heart, what a calm heart knows and what a calm heart does. So a calm heart knows some things. A calm heart knows that God is active and working for them as they rest, that nothing can happen to us except, what's filtered through God's hands. And so think about Jesus in that boat. Jesus was able to sleep in the middle of that storm.
I know. Nobody else
multiple
could.
reasons. But think about this too. We have the Spirit of Christ living within us. Not saying you're going to be able to calm the storm, but at least on the inside, God gives us the ability to do that, because we know that His providence, His protection, His provision, that God is actually providing for us as we sleep. If we'll just turn off and let Him do it, often, He'll give us a fresh understanding of our problems in the morning. We make that statement, just go ahead and sleep on it, but think about how God often gives us, a new way of looking at something, or maybe God may even wake us up at night with an idea. It talks about in Psalm 16:7, it says, the Lord counsels us as we sleep, and I don't understand all the processes of that, and, or make too much into that or interpret that too heavily, but thinking about how God, is dealing with us and helping us as we rest. So knowing those things, and then also practicing things, talk about meditation, how important meditation is, especially the things that race through our minds when we go to sleep. The to-do list, the processing the emotions of the day, all those things.
Right.
And so practicing meditation, going through the process of dealing with those emotions. It talks about in Ephesians 4, don't let the sun go down on your anger.
Don't let the sun go down on your anger, right.
And that actually comes from the 4th Psalm. Go back and read the 4th Psalm and David, and how he was running from Absalom, and how he was processing all these events, going on in his life. So yeah, man, it's huge. And just realizing that we have to process those emotions, because we have people that just treat us bad during the day. We have things that happen, And it's interesting, there's a part of your brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus takes short-term memory and turns it into long-term memory. And so if we can begin to filter those events of the day and kind of let our hippocampus work for us instead of work against us, we don't have to embed those feelings that will eventually become anger and bitterness and all that as we go through. So, those are just some things that we can process as we, lay our heads on our pillow. So there's a lot to it.
There is a whole lot to it. And so meditation, journaling, those kinds of things really are important to help us process that. And I love what I hear you saying, Dr. Chuck, and that is that I can literally trust God while I'm sleeping.
Absolutely.
So that trust is what makes my bed so comfortable, and for me to snuggle down into it and just to really see my bed as the arms of God, and he's cradling me and caring for me. So I can trust God enough to sleep all night long.
Well said.
That's an amazing, amazing insight. Thank you for that, because that gives me a visual image to keep in my mind and to plant in my subconscious as I go to sleep each night. I trust you, Father. I love that. CharlesWPage.com is your website. And so we can go there and find more information about your latest book, A Spoonful. And why was it a spoon? I guess a spoonful of sugar helps medicine go down, right?
We didn't call it, so Joey, we didn't call it a spoonful of sugar because suffering is real.
Yes,
it's real. It's
nothing
painful. So we're not trying to sugarcoat suffering, but we are trying to help people change focus. I mean, there are opportunities that our obstacles bring into our lives. I mean, there are possibilities.
Yes.
In our problems, and that's one of the things that I try to bring out in the stories. So often when we're going through a health crisis, we're overwhelmed with emotions. I mean, we feel alone, we feel isolated, we feel we're just afraid of the future and kind of what's going to happen if we're going through chemotherapy or surgery or whatever. So this whole gamut of emotions just begins to overwhelm us. And so going back to the facts, God's promises and kind of refocusing back on, looking upward, and then instead of looking inward, so often we just get in this cycle of our emotions just getting the best of us. So going back to the facts, looking upward, looking at God's promises, and then looking outward. It's amazing how those people who begin to look towards helping someone else, how much better they do in a crisis. And I've noticed that too. When I'm going through a problem, it might not be something health-wise, but just whatever it is. When I focus on encouraging or helping or doing something for somebody else, it makes me so much better. A story, my mother was dying with lung cancer. Never smoked, healthy as a horse. She had that weird, that 1% lung cancer. She was dying. And I couldn't do anything for her, and I fixed things. And it was very frustrating for my mother to be dying and undergoing chemotherapy and all this. And I was watching this, just felt helpless. And along came this lady named Catherine. Catherine had a locally advanced breast cancer, diagnosed in the emergency room. She knew it was her time, and she just really didn't really think about herself at all. And Catherine, and we're from Texas, we're big pecan eaters. So Catherine would come to the office with these sacks of pecans. And it's interesting. She would go out on the river. The whole conversation with Catherine was about whether she could go and pick pecans out by the river. And that was her deal. And it was actually her way of fellowshipping with God. When she was out there on the river, she would pick up pecans, she'd put them in sacks, and she would give them to people. So when Catherine found out about my mother, it's interesting. She would come in and begin to minister to me. Now it's interesting, I'm the doctor, the one I'm supposed to be imparting wisdom and everything.
Helping
people.
her.
Here it is. She is more concerned about someone that she doesn't even know. She's not even really concerned about herself and her health problems at all, and more concerned about my mother. And I'm telling you, that did so much for me. It ministered to me so much as a physician. And it also, I think it helped her to live longer. And I think so often if we look outward and we look towards other people, it's amazing what that does to us on the inside. So that's some of the stories that are in the book. You know, I do some missionary work. I'm going to Niger in a couple of weeks, which is one of the poorest countries in Africa. Well, it's not that sweet. It's really hot. And I'm a Texas guy. It's in the Sahara Desert. So anyway,
if you think it's hot, it's got to be hot, right?
It is the armpit of Africa, but it's really cool because we're training surgeons there, and it's in a Muslim country. We're training these Christian surgeons in a Muslim country. It's really cool. It's really cool. But anyway, I met a guy there named Bob. I'm going to change his name, but he's a physical therapist and just a neat guy. And his son committed suicide when he was there. Not when he was there, but in the past. He was having all these problems. You can imagine. I mean, you know, all those things that weren't his fault. It's just one of those things that happened. And he was kind of giving me his story, and he said, you know, Doc, when I came over here to Niger and began to minister to these people, something happened. You know, I mean, I began to heal on the inside as I came out and began to minister to these people. And it's interesting how often I think people going through cancer or whatever, if they'll just reach out to somebody, might be somebody in the doctor's office or the home health nurse or the hospice nurse, and encourage them, it'll really make a difference, I think, in their lives.
Yeah. Well, isn't that what Jesus taught us to do, is to look out for the least of these, our brothers and sisters? And so
it's not easy.
No,
it's not easy when you're, when you're looking inward and you're going through it,
going through a hard time. Right. Well, especially for we narcissistic humans, right?
Yes,
who typically are thinking only of ourselves. CharlesWPage.com is the website. Dr. Chuck is the best guy for you to see on the worst day of your life. Dr. Chuck, what is your favorite Bible verse? You've named a ton of scripture here, and I so appreciate that. And I can't wait to go back and look up all these references and learn from what you shared with us today. Is there a particular favorite Bible story, Bible passage of yours?
You know, I would say probably Ephesians 2:10. You know, it talks about how we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, things that he's prepared for us to do. Kind of that thought. Even the word for that is poema, or like his story that he's writing. And wished I knew exactly what the story was going to look like at the end. Don't you, Joey? But just realizing that there are certain things that God has prepared for each of us to do that we got to walk in, and we got to figure those things out with, I think, increasing specificity.
Yes, day by day, right?
I love that verse.
That's an amazing verse. Yeah, you make me remember that my grandfather used to say to me that he wasn't afraid of death. It was dying, because he didn't know how he was going to die. So I guess we all die a little each day, but we choose to live until we die, right? And so just trusting God with that as well. Dr. Chuck, you've certainly inspired me today in looking for ways to invest in other people and to be Christ to them in the workplace. And I so appreciate that. CharlesWPage.com is the website. Go there. You can go to Amazon.com and pick up his books. A Spoonful of Courage for the Sick and Suffering is one. What's the name of the sleep book?
Surrendered Sleep.
Surrendered Sleep. Okay.
A biblical perspective.
Oh, amazing. So that's great work. Now, if we go to CharlesWPage.com, you've got some videos there for us. Is that right?
I do. I've got a surviving sickness and suffering toolkit. It's kind of a video journal. Like I said, I've been learning about journaling and stuff and the health benefits of that. And so it's videos, they're YouTube videos, and you listen to videos, and it's got questions, and you just write down the questions, and you can do the journaling at your own pace. And I've also got another one on sleep. It's like four videos. I think it's also going to be on the Bible app pretty soon.
Oh, sweet.
But they're just videos that you can download, listen to, and kind of journal at your own pace. And it's interesting, the medical studies are showing that journaling really has a lot of benefits. Lowers your blood pressure, improves your liver function, all of this stuff that we did, improves wound healing even. There's all these studies coming out. So there's just growing bodies of literature that, that how beneficial journaling is. We've known from a spiritual standpoint, how beneficial journaling is, but it's interesting that science is beginning to kind of catch up, I guess, to maybe what we've known for a long time spiritually. But
yeah, oh, that's amazing. So go to charleswpage.com. There you'll find some videos about sickness and suffering that will help you journal and meditate around God's goodness in your life and how God can heal you, as well as some sleep work there as well, in which you can discover exactly how you can trust God and how you can sleep well at night. Dr. Chuck, thank you so much. This has been amazing. I'm sure this is an episode of Faith Positive Radio people will listen to over and over and over again because you've given us so much wisdom. So I pray that you'll receive 10 times over, you, your wife, Joanna, and your amazing kids, that you guys will receive the blessing that you've been to us today. Thank you so much.
It's been an honor.
Thanks for listening to Faith Positive Radio, the Christian business coaching conversation that increases your faith with greater joy at work so you love God and others more. Suggest guests and ask questions when you email Dr. Joey at info@getpositive.today. And be sure to get your free gift of the 5 positive business conversations to have today coaching program at getpositive.today. Until next time, may God bless you with everything your heart can hope for and more than your mind can imagine.